Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Chris Joseph. I'm going to be the host and quasi-interviewer for this event. Welcome to Surviving and Thriving After Loss. I'm joined today by three wonderful writers, Barbara Legere, and I hope I pronounced that right, a contributing writer to the book, The Epiphanies Project. Beth Robinson, also a contributing writer to the Epiphanies Project and also a co-curator. And Kelsey Chittick, author of the wonderful book, Second Half. So I would like each of you to take 10 minutes or so to tell us your story, your journey through grief, what you wrote about and why you wrote it, and maybe a short reading from your book. So Beth, I'm going to start with you, which means I have to unmute you. I think you're on.
Yep. Hi, thanks, Chris. Well, my journey started, my mother got very sick with a lung disease that we still don't really entirely know what it was. And it was a long illness, and she passed away about 2.5 years ago. And as so often happens in families, it kind of uncorked everything. It uncorked everything for me personally. It uncorked a lot of, old stuff in the family. There was so much stuff to do to clean out her home. And my father had passed away 25 years ago. So that was it. We were closing down the family home. And as I was going through this whole process, the only way I could deal with it was to write it down. I just was having so many feelings, and I was just reflecting so deeply on my life and on all of my relationships, thinking about my mother, thinking about my daughters. I started hanging around with my family a lot more. We hadn't seen each other in a long time. So I started seeing myself behaving as an entirely younger version of myself, which freaked me out. So I had to write about that. So it's all a book, which, as Chris said, will come out next year. But my piece in the Epiphanies Project is the second chapter of this book. It's called B is for Backwards, and it's about something that happened shortly after my mother passed. And I'm gonna just read a couple of pages of it. It was a lovely June day. It's continually surprising that it's summer after 4 days spent mostly in the hospital. Mom's room looked out onto an interior courtyard. Sun filtered down from the skylight several stories up, but the room still felt like it was in a windowless basement. For most of those days, we sat on the sofa and in the armchair in that room, watching the ventilator breathe for her, watching nurses come in and out and fuss with tubes and monitors and bags. It seemed futile to me. The morning after they brought her in, I called the doctor. I know you can't tell me what's going to happen, I said, but if it were your mother and your brother was in Los Angeles, would you call him and tell him to get on a plane? The short answer, he said, is yes. There was a long answer too, but I knew what was happening. I had known for months. It was weird to be in her house. Everything felt weird. She wasn't there. The house didn't feel quite like the place we had gathered for holidays, with her grandchildren running up and down the basement stairs, the busyness of the kitchen, the smell of brisket. And we weren't there to visit or to celebrate. We were there to pass the time until her funeral. And I was there to find a necklace I had made her. It was silver with a large chunk of sparkly white druzy in the middle, a rutilated quartz teardrop hanging from it, and a garnet, which was her birthstone, set on top. She told me how much people admired it when she wore it in Boca. I knew she loved telling them her daughter made it for her. I knew she loved telling me people admired it. It was a really nice piece, but it was more than that. Right then, it felt like the only palpable proof of our connection to each other, and I badly wanted to wear it to her funeral. My sister-in-law, Tina, had flown in from LA by then. Together, we went up to my mother's closet and started looking through her jewelry. I set aside some pieces I wanted, mostly pieces I had made or bought for her for Mother's Day, Hanukkah, her birthday. There was always a wall between us, so we expressed our love by throwing jewelry and other accessories over it. The story of our relationship could be told in clothes and handbags and necklaces and pins and bracelets and rings. My mother loved clothes that were elegant and clean and neat, and most importantly, that came pre-assembled in well thought out outfits. I loved expressing myself, mixing and matching in what my father used to call costumes. But he once came to breakfast wearing plaid pants and a striped shirt, and when I pointed it out, he looked down, shrugged indifferently, and went off to work. It was one of the worst moments of a sartorial career that ranged from unimaginative to memorably awful, so I didn't really care what he said about my costumes. My mother, however, had a way of looking me up and down without looking me in the face that was both irritating and crushing. I wasn't matched enough. I wasn't polished enough. I wasn't her enough. I wasn't enough. What? I would ask. Oh, nothing. My mother picked out my clothes for me until my senior year of high school, when I traded kilts, crew necks, and penny loafers for a pair of khaki overalls I wore every chance I could. Then I went to art school. It was right after Flashdance came out, and I wore sweat clothes I cut up and embellished with paint and beads. After I washed out in both art school and the theater department, submarined by undiagnosed seasonal depression, I came home and resumed dressing like a regular citizen, married a suitable Jewish husband, and proceeded to have 2 children and start drinking heavily in cropped slacks and floral twin sets. After my divorce, I returned to my costumes, and one day while shopping with my mother, an exercise I loathed for reasons having entirely to do with guilt, anger, and a frustrating struggle with my own identity, she held up a pair of Western boot-style mules. "How about these?" she asked hopefully. They had stitched seams, a snipped toe, and a stacked wooden heel. I couldn't have picked better. It was the first time she had picked something out for me, and I had looked at it and seen my style. "Yeah, I like them," I said, surprised. I let her buy them for me, and I let myself enjoy wearing them. I was thinking about that and thinking about the love language of jewelry while I went through her things. You're muted, Chris.
I am muted. I was saying thank you for those of you who don't read lips. Um,
Thank you. Thank you.
I think I said that was great also. I forgot to hold up the book for those of you who don't have it, the Epiphanies Project. We're going to save questions and comments until after both Barbara and Kelsey talk. So let's go on to Barbara and let me unmute her. I think you're on.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Hi. My story is about losing my son, Kevin. I lost him on 8/11/20, so about 16 months ago, he took his life. And the story I wrote for the Epiphanies Project is what I'm going to read from, and it's about acceptance and how I had to learn to accept first his drug use, his mental health problems, and then the fact that he may someday die. And then I'm writing a book. It's done. It'll be out probably in April, and it's called Dying to Be Free. And it's about his life and about my grief, but it's also about trying to help people understand what we can do to help people that are in his situation, because there's thousands of them, thousands and thousands, and more are dying every day from overdose. Even though that wasn't his method of death, it's unbelievable. So that's part of what my book is about. And right now I'm just going to read from the Epiphanies book. Ms. Leger, I'm afraid that if I let Kevin out of custody, he won't make it long enough for a county-funded bed to open for him. The level of heroin in his system was alarming. If your son's drug use continues at this level, chances are he will die. This warning came from a judge who had called me up to speak in private. My son Kevin discovered heroin at age 17 when a friend begged him to try it. Others in the room warned against it, but he gave in to the pretty girl with the syringe. It was the beginning of 13 years of addiction to heroin. The effects of it allowed him to cope with his depression, anxiety, and paranoid thoughts. Each day I woke wondering if he was dead or alive and if he'd make it through another 24 hours. Late at night, every siren, every ring of the phone made my heart pound in fear. For the first few years, I was angry. It seemed like he wasn't trying hard enough. I'd stay up all night waiting for him to come home, then go to work in the morning. Kevin and I lived with my mother and my sister, Therese, and the 3 of us raised him with unconditional love. Now we had to hide our jewelry, credit cards, and cash, but he still found and sold a lot of our belongings. It was an endless cycle of rehab, jail, fresh starts, and relapses. My goal became to understand not why is he using, but why couldn't he stop? Research taught me a lot, but the real insight came from Kevin himself. Sitting on the side of my bed late one night, my handsome boy looked at me with black smears on his face. He'd wiped his tears with his heroin-stained fingers. Mom, I hate this, but I can't stop. I swear to God, I really want to quit. I sat up and rubbed his back as he went on. It's like I feel normal when I'm high. After I use, it feels like everything in my life is fine, like I can manage. If I don't use, I just want to die because I hate myself. Plus, I hate what it's doing to you, Grandma, and Therese. Empathy replaced anger, but the worry and stress were still in full force. The few friends who weren't avoiding me at this point sounded distant when I started talking about Kev, but I had nothing else to talk about. People remarked how strong I was for being able to handle all this. Couldn't they see I wasn't handling it? The chaos and trauma took a toll on me mentally and physically. As time went on, I watched as my boy became more despondent. The smiles were less frequent. He existed only in a black cloud. My heart ached. My love for Kevin was deep and never ending. If only love was enough. 4 months before his 30th birthday, Kevin shot and killed himself in his bedroom. The sudden blast reverberated through the house and through my body. I knew what had happened as I ran upstairs to find him. The horror of seeing your child with a bullet hole in his head is unspeakable. I had mentally prepared myself for this for years, but nothing could have prepared me emotionally. Yet I was grateful that it happened at home and that I was there with his body as his spirit passed over. Earlier that morning, we talked about how hopeless he felt and how he told me, as he did every day, how much he loved me. He allowed me to hug him, a rare occurrence, and I memorized the feel of his arms around me, his cool skin, his broad shoulder where I laid my head. That hug was his special gift to me, a moment I will forever cherish and recall often.
Wow. I mean, I while we were editing the book, I had read your story a few times, but to hear you read it was even that much more powerful.
Thank you. That was a little bit from the middle, beginning, the middle, and the end. So it wasn't as it goes in this book, but thank you. And I just want to mention today would be Kevin's 31st birthday. So.
Well, we're going to definitely have a lot to talk about from the two stories we've heard already. Let's go to Kelsey, and I mentioned Kelsey's book, but I didn't hold it up. Second half.
I mean, that's hard to go after, Barbara. Holy Toledo. I don't know. Now's not the time to be funny, so I'm going to read a really sad part.
No, you can.
It's my brother-in-law is actually sober off of oxy and heroin, so it's amazing how many people are in that spot, and I, on some level, know what some of that feels like. So I'm so sorry. So my story is a little bit different. My husband, I met my husband when I was 19. We met in Chapel Hill at the University of North Carolina, and we fell in love pretty quickly. He was a football player, I was a swimmer, and long story short, we built a really great life together. He ended up playing in the NFL for about 6 years. He won a Super Bowl with the St. Louis Rams and was just the best freaking guy you could ever meet. I never thought I would end up with like a meathead from Allentown, Pennsylvania that was 6'5", 300 pounds. It just wasn't on my radar, nor was it on my family's radar when I brought him home. But we had a great life. We ended up moving to Los Angeles to a little town called El Segundo. And we moved here in 2002 after getting engaged at the World Trade Center about 2 months before the 9/11 attacks. And I remember Nate saying, do you think that's a good omen or bad omen? And now I'm like, I think I know which one. Well, I don't know. I'm not sold on whether this is good or bad yet. But And then in 2015, 16, I started to have a lot of anxiety. We had 2 kids, a boy and a girl. They were at the time about 7 and 9. And I just had this awful feeling for 2 years. And so I went on this spiritual journey, reading books and meditating and really kind of trying to figure out what the meaning of life was, what we were here for. I couldn't shake this foreboding feeling. And so I ended up deciding to go to this spiritual retreat in Jamaica. And my husband really wanted me to go because he wanted me to stop being so afraid and living in such fear. And so he dropped me off at the airport on a Wednesday, November 8th, and just told me to go and come back a better person and have the time of my life and let go and have fun and just be more like him, basically. So I had 3 days of the best experience of my life. I smoked Jamaican weed. I danced in the sand. I connected with great people. And then the last day, right before we were going to go on the last excursion, I got a phone call from my best friend, and she said, Nate's fallen. He had taken the kids to a trampoline park to where there's awful places like Chuck E. Cheese, but with trampolines. He would never have normally done that, but my kids told me that morning he woke up and said, before the fun police comes home, let's go do something cool together. And so my kids were 9 and 12, and it turns out that he jumped a couple times with them and then had a massive heart attack in front of them at 9 and 12. So I then got the call that he was gone, and the book is about kind of that journey from that day back into our relationship and then onward through kind of what he died from. A lot of it was caused by football. So he had a heart attack he was on the defensive line, big guy. And then a year after, we had an autopsy that showed that he had CTE, which is the concussion disease. So if he had lived, why my story is so different than others is it's a blessing that he's gone for us as much as we miss him. But the life we would have led would have been, Barbara talked about addiction, alcohol and drug addictions, like the number one thing that happens to these guys as they try to manage the depression and just the pain that they're in internally. So that's what my book is about. And it's called Second Half because he was a football player and because he died when I was 40. And I am committed to back halving this bitch, meaning my life. Okay, so my part that I'm going to read is just about after getting the call in Jamaica. A doctor called and told me that he was gone. And then my flight back, I had 9 hours back, and I got on the last plane in the last seat. They opened the door for me, actually, which I'd never seen done. But it was Jamaica, and they were like, no problem, God bless them. And this is the story. This is that part. So hold on one second. Put my glasses on because I just turned 44. You can't see. Okay. As I slid into my seat, I went into full shock. I started throwing up into a little white bag, and I couldn't stop dry heaving. I had chills. I felt like my body temperature was dropping. The whole thing felt surreal, like I was having both inside and outside experiences in my body. I couldn't stop shaking. I thought to myself, this must be what it feels like to go insane. I was all alone, and I had no idea how I was going to make it to LA. As I was sitting there crying and shaking, not one single person spoke to me. The couple in my row looked over and then quickly put their headphones on. I think they were returning from their honeymoon and hoped to enjoy the last part of their vacation. The lady across the aisle pretended she didn't see me. She just kept reading her magazine. And the flight attendant, who seemed unsure how to deal with me, finally stood next to me and quietly whispered, "Please buckle your seatbelt." To be honest, I don't think I would have talked to me either. The only thing worse than sitting next to a crying baby on a red eye is leaving a vacation to find yourself seated next to an emotionally unstable woman who was sobbing and dry heaving. They probably thought I was hungover, had been dumped, or forgot to take a Xanax. I sat alone staring at the seat in front of me, and all I could feel was fear, overwhelming fear. I grabbed my phone. I needed a distraction. I wanted to listen to a song or a meditation, anything that would calm me down, but nothing was working. I couldn't get my breathing to even out. About 20 minutes into the flight, I heard the seatbelt sign turn off. Suddenly, I felt someone standing next to me. Then I felt a hand lightly touch my shoulder. I turned my head, and there I saw a beautiful Jamaican woman. Slowly, she reached down and put her other hand on my forehead. She stood in the aisle of the plane, hands on me, and began to speak quietly to me. Baby girl, I don't know what you're going through, she whispered to me, and I do not know what awaits you on the other side of this plane. But I want you to know right now that you are not alone. God is with you. I am with you, and there are people all over the world praying for you. I didn't understand what was happening, but slowly I began to feel calmer. Now I want you to slow your breathing down, baby girl, and I want you to think about how you're going to deal with whatever it is that is waiting you on the other side of this plane, she said. I started to lengthen my inhales and exhales, and my body began to slowly recalibrate. And then the woman added before walking back to her seat, baby girl, you are stronger than you think. Once she was gone, I started to breathe normally, and a huge understanding crashed over me like a wave. At that moment, I realized I couldn't bring Nate back, but I could decide how I was going to deal with him leaving. I spent the next 9 hours, including one layover in Texas, getting very clear on how I wanted to feel in a few hours, in a week, in a year, and even 10 years from now. That night, I decided that my kids had already lost one parent, and they were not going to lose another. When we landed, the airline, now aware of my situation, let me exit the plane first. Because of that, I never got to see the woman again. But I know that she was an angel sent from above, and that she changed the direction of my life forever. Around midnight, I walked out of the Los Angeles airport and got into my mother's car. My mother-in-law was with her, and it was actually the saddest car ride of my life. No one could speak, and even if we could have, there was nothing to say. The devastation was palpable. They drove me to Michelle's house, my best friend, where my kids were waiting to hear the news and had been waiting all day.
Thank you. Thank you, all three of you. I'm going to unmute Beth and Barbara. That was great, you guys. I'm going to open it up to questions, but I have some questions first. But if for anyone who has questions, if you want to type them in the chat, and then we'll call on you in a couple minutes. But my question to all three of you, the first question is, talk to us about how writing your story helped you, and then also how you think it might be helping others.
I'll go. Writing my story and my book has helped me in several ways. One way, just practically, by giving me a project to focus on every single day. And also, I feel like it's a tribute to Kevin. It's his legacy. And so that helps by knowing that I'm finding the good memories from him to share with everyone else. And I hope it helps others, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about substance abuse and mental illness, and trying to bring that to light. And also losing your only child it never goes away. I mean, the grief is never going to leave me. And I'm aware of that, and I accept that. It's just different every day. I mean, some days it's okay, some days it's not, but it helped to write the book and to just share his story.
Thank you.
Beth, you want to go or you want me to go?
Go ahead.
Okay. For me, it felt like, because he was my partner and he wasn't my child, the experience was very much that I was going to need to continue on with as much joy as possible for my kids, and that to have a grieving mother. What happened when I heard people say that had lost parents, what was the hardest part? Every kid, or now adult, said the worst part was that my living parent died also. And so writing the book for me let me get the stories of our life down for my children and for me, and to know that we had a beautiful life, and that I can also now set it down and move forward and hopefully find love again and find another partner, because I love being married. It was 21 years, so I don't really know a life without that. So for me, it felt like, Kelsey, you've got to find a way to not carry this yourself for the next 40 years. I don't want to be known as the widow in my town, and I don't want to be known as the Super Bowl champion's who died's wife. And I don't want my kids to think that this event was all it was about. So the writing the book for me lets somebody else carry it. So I feel much lighter now, and I don't have to worry that those stories will be forgotten.
For me, it was kind of processing the experience in real time. I was writing it almost as a journal. I didn't write it, and I was looking for something. I was looking, and I didn't know what it was until I got to the end, but I kept writing, knowing that this thing that was missing in chapter 2, this connection to my mother, would, I didn't know it would, but what I was really looking for was for it to reveal itself and to feel that that even though she was gone from this plane, that she was still there, to continue to feel her and to feel connected to her in a way that I don't think I wasn't connected to her as much as I thought I wasn't in life, but I wasn't aware of it. And it just revealed so much to me as I went through that journey.
We often hear the term closure from other people after someone encounters a difficulty in life, if they lose a loved one. I'm not a big believer in the term closure, and I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on that?
I'll answer it because I dealt with this a little bit today. I don't think the word works. So it's the wrong word. I do think people are trying to express something that says it gets better. That's what it feels for me. I mean, this is my 5th Christmas, and it's easier. It's easier. There's new neural pathways with new people and new experiences, and everything doesn't seem so shocking. I am amazed at the gift of time, and I hated when people said that, but I think it's the way God made us, or we wouldn't survive. But it does get easier because our brain rewires. And so it's not closure. So this morning, I just had a shitty day. I had a day where I missed him a lot, and the holidays are a trigger. But the closure is more like it just gets shorter and less, same intensity, but you're not afraid of it anymore. So you don't hate it as much. So when it comes, you just kind of know you have a practice of sitting in it, and then it passes and you go back to the joyful part that you were. I hope I don't ever forget him. I hope I don't ever forget what this has done for me or what I've gone through to get here. Like, I can't imagine just being like, now what happened back then? Like, so closure to me, maybe we just need a different word. Acceptance is a good one, Barbara. I think you said that. It's not wishing, it's no longer thinking that it has to be different. It's just leaning into what is, and that gets easier as time goes on.
Yeah, thank you for that. I like the word healing. Mm-hmm. That we're healing never goes away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the loss becomes a part of who we are, and you don't close that. I mean, any more than any other experience that becomes a part of who we are. You're not, it shapes us. It's part of what shaped us. I think it's a little different when it's a parent. I think my story is a lot different in that there's something about losing your parents that is kind of a closure. It's kind of like, I don't know, like it cements you as an adult somehow. Like there's nobody else. There's nobody older and wiser to turn to. It's just you. So I think in some way losing, having lost both parents, it's kind of like, it's a closure on my childhood. And I think that my book was a little bit of that.
I feel that same way about my parents too. It was like, wow, I'm the oldest now. I don't have parents anymore. It was hard, but with Kevin, there will never be closure. I've surrounded myself with other parents that have lost their children, and some of them, it's been 15 years and they're still struggling every day. I hope not to struggle at the level that it affects my life, but when it happened, it changed me. It changed who I am. It's like my future all I really care about is helping other people. It's not about anything else anymore. It's just about hoping that his life had meaning behind it. So I don't think there's closure for me in that way, but it is true that time does help.
My next question is more for Barbara and Kelsey. I don't believe either one of you were writers, at least in terms of writing books, before you wrote what you wrote. Are you, I know, Barbara, you have a book coming out. Will there be more writing after this? And the same question for Kelsey.
I don't know. Right now, I want to say no. I don't want to go through this again. But who knows? Maybe. I mean, this book I felt inspired to write because Kevin and I had talked about writing a book that was going to be his success story, his happy ending story. So who knows? I might get another inspiration someday. But right now, no. I just want to get this one out.
I mean, I hope to write one about great sex in my 40s and really just get on tour with Chelsea Handler. No, I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know what I every day I wake up and I'm like, should I write something? I'm like, well, I have nothing to write. I carpool and, but I hope to write more. I really enjoyed it. And I hope Beth helps me. It really was one of the best. It didn't feel like work, and it was 4 years, and it was really a wonderful experience. I don't know how you figure out what you're going to write next. I definitely don't want to go through another crisis to manifest that, but I would love to write more. I'd love to write whatever the second half becomes and see what that looks like. So a little lighter would be nice. I'd like to have a different voice and move. I don't want this to be the whole story.
Maybe the next book can be called The Third Quarter.
The third quarter, the finish. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I want to help out with the one about sex in the 40s. In your 40s, I really want to work on that.
I'm really looking forward to getting to doing it so that I can figure out what to write. I've got so much research to do starting tomorrow.
Okay. Night's still young.
Yeah, exactly. You're so right. It's only Tuesday. Perfect.
And just so everyone knows, I wasn't leaving Beth out. Beth has been a writer for your whole adult life, right? Although the book that you have coming out next year will be your first full book.
Yes. Yes.
So do we have any questions from our audience? I mean, I can start unmuting people and we can have a discussion. However you want to do this.
Oh, Leela, why don't you go and I can go after you. Chris, yeah, there we go.
Hi everyone. Thanks so much for having me. That was wonderful. I wasn't expecting to have some grief released from my heart, and that was really a wonderful gift. And I'm reminded about grief and how it's not something that we're supposed to experience alone. And it's just the nature of things that people want to stop talking about it as quickly as possible or stop talking about the loss. But I wanted to speak about the question about closure, and just to offer a word that I like a lot for it, but it does have some, you might not understand the context immediately, but it's completion. And what that means for us left here, the ones left here, is it's almost like freedom. It's like being, and it encompasses what everyone said, like we never forgetting the waves of grief. Yeah, they get further apart and they get smaller, and they are a gift that we hope never leaves, like the memories of these people. And completion with that is like you're complete with the loss. It's like acceptance. You're complete with the way that it is. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just gonna ask really, all three of you or anybody that wants to speak to it. At least one of you mentioned, that the holidays, I know Kelsey, you mentioned it at least, that the holidays, are a triggery time, around loss. And it's been 5 years. And of course, it's still just holidays are going to bring that up. And so for all three of you, someone who lost a spouse, someone who lost a child, someone who's lost parents, what would you say to folks that are struggling, during the holiday season with grief? Because I think that just comes up for so many people. And they say that, the holiday can be like a real time of depression and struggle for a lot of folks. And I would imagine some of that has to do with loss, whether that's people that have passed away or even loss like through divorce. So just wondered if you guys had any words of wisdom for people that are just experiencing grief and loss and sadness, during as the holidays are, upon us.
I do. I think as far as helping somebody else who's grieving, this wouldn't apply to divorce, but if you've lost someone and then you're at the family gathering and people avoid bringing that person up, it hurts. It's like no one remembers that person. And I think it's good to, when you are around someone grieving, ask about that person or say, hey, I miss when Kevin was here and he wouldn't eat the mashed potatoes, or you know what I mean? Just to bring that person back, because even though they're gone, their memory is still there, and whoever's grieving them the most is suffering. That's for somebody else to help someone that's grieving. The person that's grieving, I don't know. I'm into avoidance right now. I just don't want to do Christmas. Today is his birthday. I think leading up to it, to this day, all last week was extremely, extremely difficult for me. And today it's like almost better, I think waiting for this day to come is harder than the actual day, but obviously it's not an easy one. He would have been 31, so.
Do people not bring him up sometimes because they're uncomfortable about it?
Yes, I find that a lot. I find that people are uncomfortable. For one, they think they're going to make me uncomfortable by talking about him, as if I'm not already thinking about him 24/7. So it's very well meaning, but they avoid talking about him, or else they just don't know what to say. And really, all you have to say is, I'm thinking of you. I'm thinking of Kevin. I've got several messages from his friends today, and one of my close friends, Clyde, that and my friend Kathy, that said, I'm thinking about you and Kevin today. And that just meant the world to me. Just that they remembered it's his birthday and they care.
I don't like the holidays at all. Nate loved the holidays. He was like the best dad. And so I feel really inadequate during the holidays because and it feels empty. It feels like everything is about families and everything's about couples and everybody's going to cocktail hours. It's better this year. I feel less sad because he's been gone 4 years, but it's our 5th Christmas. So I feel this huge relief from the years prior. But if I was being honest, it feels like a push to pretend and do the tree and do the lights and get the damn ladder. And like my kids are they're into it, but it just, I don't have any advice. I think too, we go to a lot of parties, people get really drunk and talk about Nate all the time. And that's really hard for me and for my kids, just because people get emotional and we end up not having real conversations about him, but just people like being hammered at parties and discussing how they felt about him. So that happens around this time of year for us. I don't know. I was in a bad spot this morning, so I don't really know how you do the holidays well, because it feels really family oriented. And so when you're missing somebody, you feel like everyone else is really happy, and then those damn Christmas cards start coming, and you just want to. I don't know what you want to do, but you don't want to get all the Christmas cards.
I don't know about you guys, but it surprises me every holiday. I don't know why I should continue to be surprised. Losing my second parent and taking the whole house apart. That was the place that we did holidays. And so every holiday, I don't just miss my mother, I miss my family, especially going through the pandemic that, we haven't been able to, get together. And I just find myself picturing the home. And for me, it's still there. And and I just keep bouncing into this place of disbelief that I can't just drive over there and walk in there, that our furniture won't be there, that our pictures won't be on the wall. So yeah, the holidays have been a little treacherous the last couple of years. On the upside, I do have a wonderful friend who has invited us over for almost every single one, and I am so incredibly grateful. So we've been very lucky in that regard.
God, you ended on an upside. It was getting depressing.
Sorry.
This was starting to be a sad call.
Any other questions that people might have, comments? Michael, you're always good for a smart observation or a comment. Anything from you? Not to put you on the spot, but whoops, I have to ask it on mute.
Yeah, what you did is the very definition of putting somebody on the spot. But thanks anyway.
I did.
He knew that, by the way.
Completely manipulative.
Textbook definition.
Yeah.
No, I'm just listening. I've known I know of Kelsey's story because through Launchpad, so I'd read a lot about it, and I obviously know Barbara's story. But Beth's is the one I related to more because my grief is over my mom the last year and a half. So sometimes like my grandma said, I never learned anything while I was talking. So I'm just enjoying listening to what everybody's saying. I'll think of something witty and urbane for you, and I'll come up with that before we sign off.
So to the three of you, where can we get your books? Where are they on sale?
I have a little shop called Amazon. It's local.
Everywhere you are.
It's local. Amazon for me, or www.secondhalfbook.com. And then you can do Barnes & Noble or Target if you want to go a little less global. But that's it.
Yeah, Barbara, where can people buy the Epiphanies Project?
Amazon. I don't know where else.
We're on Barnes & Noble too, right? I should know the answer to this.
I should answer the question, right?
Yes, please. Thank you.
It's available wherever books are sold.
There you go.
There we go.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That is the short answer. This may be it. Anything else that we want to talk about?
There you go.
Oh, thanks. That's my editor, for those of you that don't know. She walked this entire path with me brilliantly. So it's nice to do this with her.
Kelsey made it really easy. Great storyteller. I don't know about not writing before that, because she's a natural and everybody should read her book.
Definitely going to.
That part I paid her to say, but that's okay.
Thank you all for joining us. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this, Chris.
Yeah, thank you very
Quite
much.
welcome. Thank you all for attending. So long.
Bye.
I'm gonna go cry. Bye.